DNA, or deoxyribonucleic acid, is often called the blueprint of life. This incredible molecule carries the instructions that determine the traits of every living organism on Earth, from the color of a flower to the shape of a human face. But how does DNA work? What are its components, how does its sequence specify traits, and where do scientists believe it came from? Today we'll explore these questions to uncover the remarkable story of DNA. Let's begin with the structure of DNA. At its core, DNA is a molecule made of smaller units called nucleotides, which are its building blocks. Each nucleotide consists of three parts: a sugar molecule called deoxyribose, a phosphate group, and a nitrogenous base. There are four types of nitrogenous bases in DNA: adenine A, thymine T, cytosine C, and guanine G. These bases are the key to DNA's ability to store information. They pair in a very specific way. Adenine always pairs with thymine, and cytosine always pairs with guanine. These base pairs form the rungs of DNA's iconic double helix structure, a twisted ladder-like shape. The sugar and phosphate groups create the backbone of the ladder, while the bases form the steps. The sequence of these bases, often referred to as the genetic code, is what makes DNA so powerful. The order of the bases acts like letters in a sentence, providing the instructions to build proteins, which are essential molecules that perform most of the work in cells. But how does this sequence translate into traits? The process begins with gene expression, which involves two main steps: transcription and translation. A gene is a specific segment of DNA that contains the instructions for making a particular protein. During transcription, the DNA sequence of a gene is copied into a molecule of messenger RNA, or mRNA. RNA, like DNA, is made of nucleotides, but it differs in a few key ways. For instance, RNA contains the base uracil, U, instead of thymine, T, and it is single-stranded rather than double-stranded. The mRNA carries the genetic instructions from the DNA in the cell's nucleus to the ribosome, the cell's protein-making factory. Here, the second step, translation, takes place. In translation, the ribosome reads the mRNA sequence in groups of three bases called codons. Each codon corresponds to a specific amino acid, the building block of proteins. For example, the codon AUG signals the start of protein synthesis and codes for the amino acid methionine. A chain of amino acids is assembled based on the sequence of codons, and the chain folds into a three-dimensional shape to form a functional protein. These proteins determine an organism's traits. For example, a specific protein might give a flower its red pigment or allow a bird to grow feathers suited for flight. But what about the origin of DNA? How did this molecule, so essential to life, come into existence? This question has fascinated scientists for decades, and has led to various scientific explanations and hypotheses. One widely supported idea is that DNA evolved from a simpler molecule called RNA. RNA, like DNA, can store genetic information and catalyze chemical reactions. In the so-called RNA world hypothesis, scientists propose that early life forms used RNA as both genetic material and as a functional molecule to perform tasks. Over time, DNA may have evolved as a more stable way to store genetic information, while proteins took over most functional roles. Another line of investigation focuses on how nucleotides, the building blocks of DNA and RNA, could have formed in the conditions of early Earth. Experiments such as the famous Miller-Urey experiment have shown that organic molecules, including components of nucleotides, can form under simulated prebiotic conditions. These findings support the idea that the building blocks of DNA could have arisen naturally on the early Earth. There's also evidence suggesting that DNA or its precursors might have arrived from outer space. Meteorites found on Earth have been shown to contain organic molecules, including components of nucleic acids. This idea, known as panspermia, suggests that the seeds of life could have been delivered to Earth from elsewhere in the universe. Regardless of its exact origin, DNA is the result of billions of years of evolution. Its structure and function are remarkably suited to life, allowing organisms to grow, reproduce, and adapt to their environments. In summary, DNA is composed of nucleotides, which include a sugar, a phosphate, and a nitrogenous base. The sequence of these bases encodes the instructions for making proteins, which determine the traits of an organism. Through the processes of transcription and translation, DNA directs the production of proteins that shape every aspect of life. And while the origins of DNA remain a topic of scientific investigation, its role as the molecule of life is indisputable. DNA is not just a molecule, it is the foundation of heredity, the driver of evolution, and the keeper of life's secrets.